Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome back to day 21, my birthday, of my Scraptember Video a Day Marathon. This is a collaboration with the Scrappy Sisters and Christy's Beautiful Life with our fantastic special guest, Jackie Malzahn, along with a lovely group of ladies joining in every single day and all linked in the description box below. Now, for today's layout, the sketch called for 4 tiny photos across the page and then a whole page of banners. And I saw this design and I thought, you know what, if I do this all the way across from left to right, I feel like that's going to overwhelm the page. So instead, I'm going to do 3 photos of my puppies, and this is using the Bella Boulevard Chloe collection, but this was pre-recorded. So this was back when I still had a little bit more of it. At this point, it's pretty much gone, except for the fussy cut pieces. So this was when I still had quite a bit of the sticker sheet and the papers left. So I'm going to create the top border behind the photos, just like the sketch, and then I'm going to lay out my 3 photos. Now, initially, I was trying to follow the sketch, and I considered bringing in a large journaling spot to fill in some space between the 3 photos. So I had pulled out this little cut-apart piece that was actually from a Doodlebug spring collection that I had included with this little collection kit because it had a similar color scheme. So I was trying to pull in one of these journaling spots and they're just so large, or the colors just didn't quite work with what I was looking for. And so I tried very hard to make one of them work, but it just doesn't make it onto the layout. It was a cute idea, but it doesn't quite make it onto the layout. I try heavily even. But in the end, I felt like I was forcing it, and I don't really enjoy that on my layouts. I don't like it to feel forced, like I'm trying to make something happen that just shouldn't happen. And in this case, that journaling strip could have worked in a couple of different ways, but for the sketch, I felt like it would stick out like a sore thumb and draw entirely too much attention to itself. Now, because my photos are of my adorable dogs and the snow, there's not a lot of color happening in these photos. They're very neutral. They're set outside in the winter, so there's no bright colors. There's nothing really to pull colors from. Now, if you're being very literal, you could just use neutrals on this page and perfectly match your photos. But that is not my style. What I tend to do is, in this case where I have heavily neutral photos, is I will instead go for bright, bold colors. Now, why would I do that? Wouldn't that overwhelm my photos? And the answer is no, because your photos are the only place on the page where there are neutrals. And so because that area is on its own, the only area with neutral, that's what's going to draw your eye. The place that is different on the page is what's going to get the most attention. So for example, if you were to do a layout that was heavily blue, it had lots of navy, it had light blue, it had medium blue, it had several shades of blue, and then you put a pop of yellow onto that blue, guess where your eye is going to go on that page? It's going to go straight to that yellow because it's different, and that's what's going to draw your attention. So on this page, I have a couple of other tricks working as well, but the main one is because I have super neutral photos, I can use whatever colors I want, and the photos will still gain your attention. Now, I am bringing in lots of bits and pieces off of this sticker sheet because I was trying to get it used up as much as possible, and I do end up adding a cute little banner across the bottom, just like the sketch, and I really like that option in the very bottom of the layout to add your title down at the bottom, because when you have a very busy banner heavy center section like we're about to have with all these scraps, it can be difficult to keep your title visible. Because you have so many colors built up underneath of your photos, quite often trying to put a title on top of that space is going to feel disjointed. It's going to feel like it's either hard to read or you're covering everything up. And I don't really like that particular look. I've tried it in the past, wasn't really a fan. And so I really do prefer what they've done in the sketch by putting the title down at the bottom with its own little platform added in. Now this is a great, brilliant layout for using up scraps. As you can see, I'm pulling in the tiniest little pieces to make these banner flags. Provided, of course, they can make at least 2, because I want to have balance on the page with my colors and patterns. So I am also including larger patterns, a mix of colors, things that help tie the colors together like this stripe. But I want to use a lot of these scraps as well. So I'm going to keep working through the scraps that I have. Some of these are from cut-aparts. Some of these are just leftover bits and pieces from previous layouts, and I'm just making it work. And as you can see, as those banner flags fill in this space, this still leaves a lot of white space around the outside of the layout to keep it from feeling overwhelmed. Personally, I think it would still look cool to have 4 photos and pretty well fill that space. But for me, having that open white space really helped to balance out the bold, bright colors that I used with the white background. So finding that balance is something you need to practice. It's something that you have to kind of cultivate over time. And that's why I tell you guys to experiment, because it really does help you to look at the design of the page a little bit differently when you're trying new things. It makes your brain disconnect it and deconstruct it and put it back together. And for me personally, that has helped me so much in learning about design, learning about balance, learning about dimension, and all of those other buzzwords from the design world. It really does help to experiment, because it's like taking apart a toaster and then putting it back together. You understand the process so much better once you get hands-on with something new. And so that's why I really encourage you guys to give that a go. And that's why I too, even though 20 years into scrapbooking, I'm still constantly trying new things, constantly experimenting and pushing myself creatively. So now that I've got the banner flags pretty much in place, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and start working on this little platform at the bottom. Now the original sketch had it going all the way across. I didn't want to do that because my photos are not going all the way across. Had I gone all the way across with my photos, I probably would have done a full strip at the bottom as well. But instead, I decided to do a stacked strip instead. So I have several scrap pieces of paper here that I'm going to stack on top of each other to create a platform for my title. And this is just a mix of the flags that I have underneath of my photo. So it helps to tie those in with the flags up above. I've also grabbed in colors that not only contrast the yellow behind my photos, but also coordinate with it. So I've got the stripes that have both that bright, bold yellow and orange, but also the greens and pinks and grays that are in the other paper strips. So having a coordinating pattern like a stripe or a floral that has multiple colors in it can make that process so much easier. So now I've brought in my title, which is just quite simply sunny. It was a snow day, but it was very sunny, so I thought that worked quite well. I'm going to bring in a little bit of washi tape in amidst my taped down banners for some skinny dimension in between. So we're layering now. We're coming in with washi to layer on top of the existing flags. And we're also adding some skinny little layers in the process. Because most of my banner flags are pretty similar in size and shape, coming back in with this super skinny washi not only adds a little bit of that bling from the gold foiling, but it also has an interesting addition of a narrow shape, which kind of breaks up the look of the rest of the strips, and I just think it looks rather interesting. I'm also nearly at the end of this roll of washi, so I'm trying to use it on as many layouts as possible. So that may be an alternate motivation for using that washi. So now that I think I've pretty much got my banners done, I want to create some clusters on the side of this layout. Now this is not in the sketch. The sketch pretty much just has 4 hearts scattered in different places on the page, and that's it. There's no clusters, there's no embellishments other than those 4 hearts. So I'm going to have to pretty much make this bit up myself. And in this case, what I find works the easiest is to create matching or coordinating clusters on opposite sides. So you can choose to do this diagonally at the top left, bottom right kind of thing, or in this case, I'm going directly across. So the things that I put on the left, I'm putting on the right, and I'm just repeating the same sort of clusters. They don't have to be exactly the same, but usually the sizing and similar colors so that they have the same balance. And so the layout continues to feel balanced all the way across, because I'm not trying to deflect from the photos. I'm trying to add to the photos. I'm trying to embellish the photos. And so I'm just adding these little detail pieces that just make it feel complete. So again, you see what I'm doing on the left side, I'm doing on the right side. I put in a larger piece, I put in a larger piece. Bring in smaller ones, bring in smaller ones. And while I think the colors at some point do change, I do love this feeling of even balance on either side. And with odd photos in the center, you can have just two clusters and it works just fine. Now I will end up adding a couple of little florals down here by my title, again reflecting that even balance, one on each side. And I really like the effect that this has on the layout, and it uses up these teeny tiny little florals that I completely fussy cut a whole page of and now need to figure out what to do with since I'm running out of the paper. So you'll see those pop up on some future layouts, probably more mixed media-y layouts where you don't need a lot of paper, and I can just use up lots of these tiny little florals. Another thing you may be noticing is that I did not use snowflakes. I did not use winter themes. I'm using florals. So don't feel trapped by your photos and think you can only create things that perfectly match the theme of your photos and your photos only, because that's absolutely not the case. This is actually a cat collection that I'm using to scrap dog photos in the snow. So feel free to give yourself the opportunity to expand to other things in your stash. Don't feel like I have snow photos, I must use winter collections. I have spring photos, I must use florals. No, use whatever you like. Make it work for you. Use whatever colors you like, whatever makes you happy. If you saw these photos, you may not be thinking bright, cheerful, summery photos. So for sure, these are absolutely perfect for a cat collection in the spring. No, maybe not, but they work. It all works together if you coordinate the collections with your photos. They don't have to match. They have to coordinate. They just have to make them work. Now, I have this open space between my title and my photos, and I knew I had a lot of journaling to add. So I decided to go ahead and just draw my journaling lines in between the large photo cluster at the top and the small title cluster at the bottom. What this does is, again, fill in that space, but it also kind of bridges that gap a little bit and connects the two at least somewhat. I didn't go all the way up with my journaling lines because I don't really need to, but it fills in enough of that space to make those feel a bit more connected. So in this journaling, I'm just going to be talking about my dogs and how much they like the snow. Nothing super heavy or involved. Coming in with my scattering and splattering, those tiny little florals around the edges of my clusters are my scattering, and my splattering comes in two phases, as it always does. Once with the Nuvo drops, usually in gold, and then with Heidi Swap Color Shine, just to do my uncontrolled splattering around the edges. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, bye y'all.